the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 819. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we feature our conversation with Soumyadeb Mitra, founder and CEO of Rudderstack. We discuss the trials and tribulations of consolidating and effectively using customer data. Tools like machine learning and generative AI make generating insights easier, but easier does not mean easy. We also discuss entrepreneurship and trust. Soumyadeb Mitra is the founder and CEO of Rudderstack, the warehouse-native consumer data platform, CDP. Rudderstack helps data leaders drive revenue by making it easy to collect, unify, and activate customer data for every team and tool. With a strong background in software engineering and data analytics, Soumyadeb is passionate about helping data leaders and teams make data valuable in their companies. Before founding Rudderstack in 2018, Soumyadeb worked in various technical roles at leading technology companies where he gained valuable experience in big data, machine learning, and cloud computing. While head of machine learning at 8x8, a unified communication as a service company, he found existing CDP solutions unable to meet his requirement for security, reliability, and scalability. He left to start Rudderstack to solve that problem. Before we jump into the interview, learn to tame your work intake beast. Work Intake Summer Camp is in session. Jeremy Willits and I are celebrating the summer in the Northern Hemisphere with a summer camp. We look at the primary causes of work intake problems and how to solve them. Join us for an entertaining and informative LinkedIn Live event. The next weekly session is at 11:30 Eastern Daylight Time, July 17th. There's a link in the show notes to the LinkedIn page. We look forward to seeing you there. Now, it's time to talk customer data. Soumyadeb Mitra, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thanks, Tom, for having me. Really excited to be talking to you today.
I am excited too, because data is one of the last real projects I did before I became a consultant. Back when I had a real job, was to create a data warehouse for a company that never had one before, back last century. So it's been a while. Mm-hmm. Data is important. One of the things that I noticed as I was going through your background and the company that you're now the CEO of and founder of Rudderstack was the idea of effective use of customer data. And before we dive into how that's happened, when you use the term effective use, what do you mean by effective use of customer data?
There are two parts to this, right? One is what is customer data and what is effective use, right? So I think maybe I'll quickly define what is customer data. So
fair.
If you're a consumer company, let's say think about Priceline or any company which is selling stuff to consumers. Now, most of that interaction happens online. They come to the website, they do things, look at products, browse catalog, eventually maybe they buy something and so on. And then all that interaction is valuable data, right? Because you can know about their you can know about your customers by just even looking at the things they have looked at and the things they have clicked and the browsed and so on. And then if you have a physical store, then customers also go to a store, they eventually make purchases there and so on. So all that data that your customers, how they are interacting with your brand is customer data. That's kind of like the definition. Then what are the users of all that data, right? I mean, there's a ton of data. Why would you even worry about it? I think there are two kinds of use cases. One is more around analytics, right? I mean, you want to understand your own, let's say, product catalog. You have a lot of products and you want to understand which are selling more, which are people looking at, which are people not looking at, liking, not liking, and so on. To understand that, you have to understand how people are interacting with those products. And for that, you need to collect that customer data. So that's just one example. Analytics is generally, everything around analytics is one use case of customer data. And there are use cases around product analytics. You want to understand how people are using your app. Maybe they're getting lost somewhere if they get in some part of the app. So all that is again can be understood from collecting, analyzing customer data. The other main use case is around what you call personalization, right? I mean, you want to personalize the experience for each one of your customers, and like Amazon does a great job. A lot of other brands don't do a great job, but like personalization means I should, when I interact with the app, like the products that I see and the recommendations that I get and the email that I get, everything should be personalized to me. It does make business sense, right? The more personalized it is, the more I'll interact and the more I'll buy, right? So that's kind of the other broad category of use cases. Like you can call it activation, you can call it personalization, but yeah, that's kind of the two buckets. So yeah, analytics helps you understand your business. Personalization helps you like personalize the experience for your customers. So that's what like effective use means. Like if you are able to do both effectively, then you have making good use of your data.
So in the example that you just went through, I mean, obviously it's mostly true customer data coming in from the web, interactions with the system. How do you marry that with other internal sort of data, right? And it's good to know, right? Interactions, but which kind of transaction actually does pay? Where's the ROI on it? How do you marry that with things like accounting systems, ERP, those sorts of data that then can be actually used to drive different kinds of decisions?
Yeah. In fact, like this is the this is a hard problem, as you pointed out, right? And people have been trying to solve this. And I mean, you have behavioral data that is being collected often through tools like, let's say, Google Analytics, right? You can install their SDK and then Google Analytics will collect all that data, give you like nice dashboards and so on. But then it is very hard to send your own internal backend accounting data into Google Analytics, right? I mean, for various reasons. They don't have like well-defined APIs to do that. You don't want to like, I mean, how do you stitch your accounting data may have different identities versus your browser data may have cookie IDs and so on, right? So how do you send the data? How do you stitch the identities? How do you then like make use of that data, right? So it's a hard problem. And I think what changed in the last, I would say, 10 years or maybe even less is this notion of cloud data warehouses, right? I mean, you have the Snowflakes and the Redshifts. So finally, they are kind of becoming the ground for doing this combination, right? You can collect your behavioral data into a data warehouse. Instead of sending to Google Analytics, you can bring it to a data warehouse. You can do both, but yes, get it to a warehouse. Run some pipelines to get your accounting data and your billing data or support data into your data warehouse. And then data warehouses have like give you that like almost SQL-like access, right? I mean, you can write SQL, you can write Python code to like do all that, or you could use a tool like Rudderstack to help you do all that join. But like, yeah, finally with data warehouses, it's possible to combine that data. It was possible before data warehouses also. You could like set up a Hadoop cluster and so on, but it was like you needed like a lot of engineering and so on. Right now, it is kind of getting democratized.
When you say democratize, does that mean small organizations might be trying to tackle some of this? It's not just the the mega corporation that's going down this path, the Googles.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's what we see. In fact, like majority of our customers are in the mid market or even like higher SMB. Like we see people, companies with like even 20% engineering teams trying to setting up this stack, buying Snowflake, getting all that data, building personalization use cases. Because yeah, I mean, it finally matters for everyone. And it was inaccessible earlier, but it is now getting accessible.
When you say it matters, what do you mean by it matters?
So it matters in the sense like if you're running a consumer business, at whatever scale you have a $100 billion revenue like Amazon, or if you have like a $100 million or $10 million revenue, right? Finally, you have customers, and then you have like a product catalog, and you have to understand to run your business effectively. You have to understand what products are selling, what parts of the app are people getting confused about, and then maybe personalization doesn't matter at a very small scale. Like if you have really like two products to sell, then maybe there is no personalization you care about. But I mean, like at some scale, personalization does become important, right? And so on. Even when you have two products, it is also about like there are other complicated use cases about personalization, right? I mean, if somebody dropped off the cart, maybe you should like give them a coupon, like 20% off, 30% off, but then you want to give it to everyone. So you want to have some kind of a model that like this user is more likely to come back and buy more if you just like try to retain them. And how do you build that model? Like, there are slightly complex use cases. Maybe like early stage startups don't care about that, but at least the analytics use cases is very much there. You want to analyze how people, even if you have like 1 million revenue, you want to understand how people are using the product, what products are selling, and et cetera, et cetera.
So what do you see as the biggest barrier that people run into that causes them not to leverage their data, whether effectively or not?
I think the biggest historically has been tech, right? I mean, to set up this infrastructure, I have to like start collecting the data. I have to figure out how to run those. Like, I mean, this data is coming from your website and apps. Like, hopefully, you have a lot of customers. You have the volume can be huge, and then you have to get this into. Let's say before the cloud data warehouse era, you had to set up a Hadoop cluster, which was never easy. So all that was like a lot of work and engineering effort, basically. And so that's kind of one bucket of things. This is like engineering work. The second bucket of things is more around even the understanding of. It's more of, I would say, like almost internal company communication issues, right? Like engineering is good at setting up the stack and collecting the data, but then the people who are actually making use of the data is like marketing or like product analytics or your whoever owns the supply chain, etc. Right? So those are the users of the data, and like having them communicate is also sometimes hard, right? I mean, like what a marketing person wants, and then getting that communicated to an engineering person who can then like write it out and define those, set up those pipelines and so on. Like there like organizational issues also around effective use of data.
It's a classic problem. That problem has been around, yeah, I guess, since the first person who started writing code that wasn't part of the business existed. Why now? Why is it now that we've started to conquer some of this, not the tech end of it? Well, yeah, let's start with why is it now that we're conquering the tech end of this and this is becoming something that is democratized, to use your term?
People have been doing this, right? I mean, Amazon has been working on personalization for like maybe 20 years, right? So it's not that like now is what it is happening. To my point, like democratization is happening. And the reason for that is, again, like technology is becoming more accessible around data, like data technology is getting accessible. Like cloud data warehouses were the first main thing. You can collect data at scale, process data, and so on. And this was not there like 5, 7, 10 years ago. So that I think that has been the main driver. Plus, hopefully, like, yeah, and there have been an ecosystem of tools around cloud data warehouses, right? Companies like us, which makes it easy to collect that data, process that data. So I think like that I would say is one thing that has helped like democratize this use cases. The other thing, which is we are fairly early in that. I mean, we have to talk about generative AI. Like, I mean, everybody is. So
Yeah.
I guess like I think that might also further like democratize use cases on top of this data. And like, but we're very very early in that. Like, I mean, I think we just saw like it getting launched.
So are we to a point where every firm who wants to do this doesn't have to have at least 2 or 3 PhDs in math to actually understand the data scientists kind of thing?
100%, right? I mean, like to like even to build like a simple recommendation use case, like you had to have like a team of 2 to 3 data engineers who could like collect that data, set up those data pipelines. You have to have like 1 or 2 data scientists who can like model that data, and then you have to have like one at least ML ops engineer who can build that model in production and so on. Right? So you're talking about like a team of 5, 6 like highly qualified people to
Yeah.
like set up very simple,
Expensive, highly qualified people.
expensive, very highly qualified, right? And then if you're a Bay Area highly funded tech startup, yes, you can. But like think about like if you are like a retail company out of like it's hard to attract talents. Also, right? There aren't enough people with that qualification.
You know, how is this impacted by the emergence of, at least the not that it hasn't been around for a while, the idea of machine learning and perhaps generative AI?
ML has machine learning has kind of enabled these use cases, right? I mean, now you could before ML, you could even personalize, and we like so all the personalization algorithms, like even simple ones, are like ML some version of ML, right? Rule-based ones can only go so far. So the use cases have been enabled by ML, but to our earlier point, putting that into production is a lot of work. So that's kind of, if you look at like traditional ML recommendation, and if you look at generative AI, right? I mean, it's a new thing. Like even for a very specific use case, like we have been internally looking at personalization, comparing like traditional approaches with like what you could do with like generative AI, and there have been some like papers around it, people applying LLMs for recommendation, and there are specific use cases where LLMs shine, right? I mean, if you don't have a lot of historic data to train your algorithms, then you can really LLMs do better. But if you have a lot of historic data, it's still to be proven. Like if can LLMs like beat traditional ML algorithms for a very specific use case. I'm like just talking about like product recommendation. So yeah, I think like some of this will shape out, but LLMs have a lot of advantages also, right? I mean, when you don't have historic data, you just have to learn from the external context. That's where they shine. Other places are around being explainable, right? I mean, like a lot of the traditional, like, I mean, if you look at traditional approaches like collaborative filtering and so on, they're like kind of black boxes. Like this is a user, these are the 5 recommendations. Like LLMs can actually explain, like, okay, this is why we are recommending these 5 products. Like, yeah, there are use cases that they shine on. I think, so yeah, I mean, a lot of these traditional ML things will be, if not replaced, augmented by LLM. The cost is also another angle. It is still very costly to run inferences, like if you're looking at like large scale like models. Yeah, I think it's to be seen how this shapes up. But like eventually, like yeah, it will sometimes definitely be like augmented by LLM. So that's kind of one side of things. The other side of things is like a lot of recommendation, funnily enough, is still very manual, right? You have like I kind of talked about the rule-based system, but like in reality, 95% of like emails, promotions that you're getting is some person in the marketing org setting up a campaign, right? That like send this email to everyone who has done X but not Y, send this email or send something else to like so they're like people are setting up manual rule-based campaigns in a marketing tool like Salesforce, Adobe, trigger those emails, right? So those workflows should definitely get automated, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't make sense for humans to like start setting up these things. But then, I mean, you cannot just say it is completely automated. It is. There was a way to automate that even before LLMs. It was not automated because like you want human in the loop for various reasons. So you have to still figure out how to solve that. But at least then will get augmented with LLMs too. So
Looking at your background, you are a serial founder and have a significant technical background. How do you, as a founder, make that break from, the person pounding the keyboard, writing the software, being the CTO, and move up to the CEO level? And how do you divorce yourself of, living in the tech side of it? Or do you?
yeah, I mean, finally, this is a great question, and this is something I'm still learning, right? I mean, I have never been a CEO of a company. I mean, I've never managed like revenue orgs, and like, I mean, there was a point I didn't even know what is the difference between an AE and an SDR and so on, right? and then so on. So I think, like kind of learning. But to your point, I think yes, at some level, you're as a CEO, you're responsible for the overall success of the company. So you cannot just say that I'll do tech 100%. At the same time, you hire your exec team, your leadership team, who can complement you, right? So I have like a great chief revenue officer. I have a great VP of marketing who know what they are doing, and I trust them to do their stuff while I can focus on like product engineering that like I truly feel passionate about. So yeah, I think finally you're still responsible for like the revenue and so on to the board, but I think day in, day out, you trust your team. So that's how I guess you can scale.
How did you learn to trust your team? I mean, I have friends who've done startups, and I think one of the hard parts is learning to trust and to let somebody else run with something. How did you go about learning that?
Maybe it's a personality thing. I mean, versus I don't think I had to like ever put extra effort to like start trusting someone. I mean, it's like, firstly, like one part is like I don't even have an option. It's not that I can micromanage my revenue leader. I mean, like okay, this is how we close this deal. I have no idea like how to run like sales orgs, right? So I mean, you are forced to trust your team. Right? That's kind of one part of it. But even otherwise, right? I mean, even with product, I have a product leader, we have a product team, and like you trust your team to do their stuff, and then you're there to like of course manage and make sure and lead and give direction. So I think, yeah, I if you ask me what has been my top 3-4 problems, like trusting the team and being stressed about it was not in that. So
Okay, interesting. What was your top 3 problems?
I think like scaling up, right? I mean, trying to learn about other functions that is like you don't have any clue about. Like that, I would say is one thing, because even if you trust, like you have to give some broad overall directions, right? That like how much do we invest, whether this makes sense or not, right? So I think so you have to have enough knowledge about things which you have never done before. I think that's one thing I'm still learning. Second thing I think is, as we scale, people, finally it's all about people, right? I mean, like you have a team, you have to motivate them and keep them excited and address their pains and concerns. And so like leadership is all about, I would think, people management. It's not less about product, like and less about everything else. So, and like some people are amazing at that. Right? Martin Luther King could get like millions of people to follow him. And how do you do that is one thing I think I have to learn a lot. Right? I mean, engineers are not like good at people management, and I'd rather interact with a computer and like type things than like talk to a lot of people. And I'm kind of like personality wise also that. I mean, I'm not outgoing. I don't enjoy going to conferences and so on. So that's one thing, like big thing I still have to go and learn. So I think like, and both fall under this broader thing about like, yeah, getting beyond your comfort zone. Yeah.
How are you learning it? So are you just learning it by experience? Have you sought out mentors? How have you gone
Yeah.
about and learned those things that are hard?
I have some mentors, like people like advisors, and I reach out to them, and they've been very helpful. But I, I think we can. I've thought about like getting an exec coach. I mean, even my board tells me, I mean, like, but I've never done that. So yeah, we'll. Like it's probably learning by failing is what is the biggest one. Probably the worst way to learn, but that's what is happening right now.
Arguably, running an experiment, learning, assuming is, I would argue, and I probably taught people, is a pretty good way to learn. So maybe that's learning by bumping into things, but it's working for you. So it's hard to argue that it's the bad way to do it. If somebody came to you and said, I'm going to do a startup, what's the number one piece of advice you would give them?
Validate what you're working on. I think I've learned again that the hard way. I mean, even before my previous, I mean, I've tried multiple startups, failed, some went, some success. I think I feel the key difference between like where things have worked and where things haven't is like, particularly for technical founders, like we immediately think, oh, the idea makes a ton of sense. Let's start writing code. And you spend like 3 months writing code. And the more you write, the more you get attached to it.
Of course,
Right?
yeah.
My stuff that I need to sell, and then you spend like a lot of time, and then while there could be like 10 other ideas that would have made a lot of sense, and they might have been more technically challenging also. So I think not being married to your idea and like going and validating is one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is like, again, for technical founders, I think business founders look at it in a very different way. Anyway, I'm not qualified to give advice to business founders, but technical founders, like I came, like I was doing I went to grad school. I did a PhD, right? And in PhD and in general, like technical people get excited about finding something innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is an idea nobody has worked on. Like, okay, I'm the first person to kind of work on that idea, and then that's how we get papers published. That's how innovation is extremely important. And it is important, but when it comes to business, I think this is an idea nobody has done and nobody has even thought of. and like nobody's using, it's probably then it's a very bad idea. Then probably nobody cares about it. So I
Yeah,
think
you're not
that's
going to be able to sell that.
you have almost like have to unlearn that, right? Like you don't have to look for things that nobody most innovative. I'm the first person to think about something that has no weight in your eventual success.
I noticed that in LinkedIn, you had a year that you were doing stuff, which I just immediately intrigued me.
I mean, it was it's kind of interesting, right? So after my grad school, I joined a company called Data Domain, right? It was like a startup. It was, in fact, like founded, the CEO was Frank Slootman, who is like a big shot now. He's the CEO of Snowflake, took multiple companies public, but that was his first company as a CEO. So, and he in fact, like I was going to, after grad school, like most people go to like Google research or Microsoft research or go to academia. I was doing all of that, but he convinced me, you need to come and join Data Domain, right? And it was like a great experience. So did that for a couple of years. Company got acquired, and then a lot of people left. So I also thought, okay, like this is now slowing down. So I left Data Domain. My daughter was also like born at that time. So I thought, okay, now I have to figure out what's next. What is wanted to become founder. So plus I also wanted to travel. So it took like, okay, I left the job, then thought, okay, like I'll figure out something. And it was like I tell my wife, right, when I'm like when I'm 80 and about to die, or whenever, I think that 1 year is what I'll always go back to, right? Like
Interesting.
we did so many things, traveled so many. I mean, so many years have passed, but like that 1 year I will always remember because we traveled a lot, spent a lot of time together with my daughter. She was born, plus like worked on startup ideas. So did like so many different things in that 1 year. It's like
8
it was
countries?
yeah, I mean, my brother lives in Poland, so like yeah, we were in Europe. He was getting married in Poland, so part of that he traveled a lot. Yeah, so it was fun.
Wonderful, wonderful. Those kind of experiences, they're hard to capture on a resume, but I think the passion that you talk about it, it's like it is something that you'll remember, and it probably will color your thought process throughout your life.
It does, in fact, like it does. Like so far till that point, I was mostly like very much an engineer, right? Like I mean, give me a code, I'll write, right, and I can produce a system and so on. But like that 1 year, while I was traveling and so on, I was also trying to like bootstrap startup ideas. So like even this idea of like reaching out cold to someone on LinkedIn, say like, would you like give me feedback on this? Like this was new to me, and so learned a lot of like those other skills, which I think like some of them were hard. Like getting rejections. Like again, as an engineer, I'm not used to getting like rejections 9 out of 10 times, right?
Yeah.
But some of that was painful. But like looking back, I think that's probably the most fun time.
This has been great. If you woke up tomorrow morning and somebody handed you the caffeinated beverage of choice that gets you started in the morning and a magic wand and said that you had 2 wishes that could revolutionize how people use customer data, what would those 2 things be and why?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think like the biggest problem around uh, like why customers or why people are not using customer data is probably not technology. Like the technology is there, like you can put together. It is kind of mostly, I think, organizational and people issues. So like yeah, the first wish would be like if everyone in the world magically, everyone who is responsible some part for some version of customer data magically like realize the value and the technology stack, and maybe hopefully about Rudderstack. Like they all think, okay, we need to deploy Rudderstack or whatever. Right? I was just joking, but I think yeah, that is probably the first thing. I mean, like it's kind of hand wavy. I don't know how to make it concrete. Maybe we can. There's a concrete wish, but like education and important understanding people understanding the importance and so on is kind of one wish. The other wish I would say is like I I feel what is the biggest technical roadblock to getting this? I think is like there is no technical roadblock per se. Right? I mean, all the pieces are there. You can like put together a stack or with run a stack or with like all the other ways you can do it, like DIY. I'd say like it is mostly capability around like yeah, people goes back to the first point also, right? I mean, if your team appreciate the importance of this, they can do it. So sorry, it's probably not the answer you're looking for.
No, that's it's a good answer. Especially, both of them are excellent. I find that organizations, when they're doing something new, whether it's a process or a method or wrestling with a new way of seeing their data, a lot of times just can't get out of their own way. They're stuck in the past, and so they're anchored to it. So it takes some sort of shock, but a magic
Very
wand would be a great way.
That's very true. In fact, that's very true, because I think a lot of organizations, like their ability to like adopt something new is the biggest problem, because like they have some legacy stack, some 20-year-old tool that like neither the vendor is investing nor you're investing. So like it's on the downhill, that, but you still believe, okay, like we'll fix it next year and next year and next year. Procrastination, and I mean there are valid reasons for doing it also, right? Disruption is risky. So yeah, I mean that's a good point.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget that a sunk cost is truly a sunk cost, and
Yeah, exactly.
try to make it back. Again, this has been absolutely fabulous. How would people find out about you? How would they find out about Rudderstack?
Yeah, I mean best way is to go to our website, rudderstack.com.
Yeah,
And
that is actually a great simple one. How did you get that one? That was fantastic.
the name of the website.
No, the rudderstack.com. Yeah, well, where does the name come from? I was going to
So
ask
rudder
about.
is, yeah, so and I cannot take credit for that. It came from one of our early investors, and like rudder, the idea was like it's kind of the ship rudder, right? We will help you navigate
Okay.
your customer data and so on. So that's rudder. We did not get rudder.com, so we said, okay, let's put stack, and we are building a stack, so rudderstack.com.
Well, from a technology point of view, understanding the guidance and then the stack to me, it's like, now I understand. But yeah, that's those are both good metaphors. So how, again, rudderstack.com, and how else?
And yeah, and the other is like, I mean, people can email me my first names. I mean, I have a painful first name, but because of that, I have first name at gmail.com, personal and everything. And it's very easy to find me on LinkedIn. So as long as you can spell my first name, it should be very easy to find me. Like just do at gmail.com, LinkedIn, you'll get me.
Well, we'll have a lot of those contact information in the show notes. Smai, this has been absolutely fantastic. At this point, I open up the platform for you to promote anything you like. You shared a lot of excellent information, both from a technology point of view and from a founder's point of view. The platform is yours to promote anything you like.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I mean, going back to that point of customer data, right? I think the biggest, the like biggest challenges around customer data is like, number one is around collecting all that data. So, like, how do you collect data from your website, your like transactional systems, backend systems, like bringing together that data is not rocket science, but it's a lot of work managing those pipelines, and nobody in your data team wants to get alerted at like 2 a.m. in the morning that your pipeline broke. So that's kind of like the one thing we first take care of, like managing all the data pipeline and helping you collect first party data. The second problem is like once you get all the data into the data warehouse, how do you like model that data? First, how do you stitch identities, right? I mean, you have so many different identities about user. How do you map all of them into one user? Then how do you create this, what you call customer 360? Like it's an overused term, but like the idea is like you create like that one view of all your customers. And then you run predictive algorithms on top, right? You're predicting churn and recommendation and other things on top of. And that is very hard because generally, like people have like tabular predictive is easy. Like if you have a table and you have 20 columns and you're predicting the 21st column. But like when you're predicting something like churn, you have to look at historic data as well. Like somebody churned 30 days ago, then what are the features at the point of churn, right? So like looking at time series prediction is again like work that you have to set up. So we help with that. And finally, once we have all of that, like you have your predictions, you have your features, how do you make use of that, right? You typically want to like create audiences or ship it back into different tools. So we kind of help with that as well. So yeah, I think we're a platform to help people manage customer data. And we are not the only, like there, you can DIY, you can hire a bunch of engineers. Hopefully we'll, with Rudderstack, people get accelerated time to value. That's a quick pitch.
Soumyadeb Mitra, founder and CEO of Rudderstack, thank you again for spending at least in Ohio, a moist Friday afternoon with us on the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thanks, Tom, for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate your time.
In Reread Saturday News, Chapter 7 of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's Flow is titled Work as Flow. Work is one of the largest single blocks of time adults carve out of their 160 hours of breath in a week. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi states, work that requires skill and is done freely refines the complexity of self. Flow is the result of this refinement. Link in the show notes to this week's installment of Reread Saturday and all the previous installments of our Reread of Flow. Next, we continue the riveting story of Innovatech and how a data-driven improvement initiative can be bootstrapped with courage and perseverance. We also have a visit from Susan Parente, whose Not a Scrumdimentalist column delivers insight and advice. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?